Well, thank you for choosing Foundations, a Bethel Bible series. And I would love to share with you a tip for how to approach and read the Bible. Imagine that I told you that on a daily basis, my routine was to sit down on my couch, flip on the TV, and watch 5 minutes of a movie, turn it off, leave, and then the next day, sit down, turn on a different movie, watch the first 5 minutes, turn it off, leave, and then the next day, sit down, turn on a different movie, watch the last 5 minutes. And then I came to you and said, I just don't think that I'm a movie guy. I just can't get into movies. I don't enjoy them, so I guess movies just must not be for me. You'd say, no. You've got to watch the whole movie in one go. You've got to see the characters, the flow, the context, the build, the climax, the conclusion, the plot. It all makes sense in the flow and the sweep of the whole movie. Well, believe it or not, so many of us approach the Bible in this way without ever branching out. We will read one Psalms, finish there, then the next day, read a chapter in Genesis about Noah and go, God seems a little bit angry. And then the next day, read a chapter in Ezekiel, leave confused, and then we finish up the next day in John, and on a hopeful note where Jesus does a miracle. And we just have to remember that much of the power and the revelation and the excitement in the Bible actually comes through the context and the flow of reading the whole letter or the whole book. And this idea of reading a letter or book in one sitting actually isn't a new idea either. The Bible was first split into chapters in the 13th century, and then it actually wasn't even split into verses until the 16th century. So more than half of church history had no chapters or verses like we do. So they would sit down, and like you would with any other good novel or movie, you'd read it from start to finish. Now, you might do it in segments, but you certainly wouldn't flip to the end and read the last part of the book. And so when they split the Bible into chapters and verses, it wasn't to necessarily enhance the reading experience, but more actually to enhance the organization, so that people who were reading it could maybe find the same spot or know a certain area of the Bible they were talking about. And so when we're reading through a letter or a book, we have to remember that it's very much intended for you, but in some senses, we also have to remember that we're reading someone else's mail from an author that we actually never knew personally. So when Paul or Peter or Moses or Luke wrote something, a church in Philippi might just read a segment and go, that's classic Paul. I know Paul, I know that that's something he would say, and they understood him in a certain context. Well, the only thing we know about Paul or Luke or Peter or Moses is what we read in their books. And so we are in need of actually understanding the complete context of what they're saying. And so if we open to Galatians 3, it starts with saying, you foolish Galatians. And you might go, man, Paul's a little bit of a rough guy. He's not very pastoral and very strict. But actually, when we start at the beginning in Galatians 1, he says, grace and peace to you in Christ Jesus. Now, one thing you could be thinking is, well, that sounds nice, but who really has time to sit down and read a whole book or a whole letter in one sitting? Well, I think you'd be surprised that you can sit down and read something like Ephesians or Philippians or 1 Peter in 10, maybe 15 minutes. And something you also might be thinking is, but if I read it that quickly, am I actually going to take it all in and remember everything I read? Well, when you watch a movie, your thought isn't, I've got to memorize the dialogue and the sentences of every actor and actress in order to enjoy this. You wouldn't think that, but you'd be surprised. You watch it 2 or 3 times and your friends and you can quote half the movie. Well, I think the same thing applies to the Bible, that when we read it, our ultimate goal isn't necessarily to memorize every line, although that could be fun. It's actually to get swept along by the movement and the theme that the author's trying to say. And then when you do read it through, you'd be surprised how much you actually do remember. So I want to challenge you all to take the time, and maybe not every day, but maybe once a week or once every couple of weeks, to sit down and read a letter or a book in one sitting. And I truly believe that the biblical author will begin to seem like a real person. It'll feel like Paul or Peter is actually writing to you, and you'll get to know them in the context of what they're saying. And familiar verses that might seem old or really normal to you will come alive in the context of the whole book. So thank you for tuning in, and I hope you enjoy this tool.